Take a look at where Bitcoin is right now at $122,000. Just on Saturday, we were still at $116,000, and look at what I told you. Remember, every time I put out price predictions or share my expectations for the coming days, I make myself vulnerable. That makes me vulnerable because I could be wrong, and then the comments always say, yeah, but you said this or that. Look at what I said. Because we've held up so well here, I clearly tend to think that we'll at least hit $120,000, maybe correct down again afterwards. We'd have to see how things develop, because at $123,000, we have two very, very interesting support zones. And accordingly, I simply expect, with an 80% probability, a bounce towards $120,000 in the next few days. As I said, with an 80% probability in the next few days. Let's move over to the chart. What happened? Instead of $116,000, we're now at $122,000. What more could you want? That's just great, isn't it? I mean, that's a 5% bounce. I traded that with 50 times leverage anyway. That's how easy it is to make money here if you have a bit of market structure and the like. Please leave a like on this video for this precise work and for the announcement 2 days ago. Thank you very much for that. And yes, basically regarding the chart, I just have to say that right now I don't really want to make another price prediction because we're currently in this phase of finding direction. It all depends on what happens here. If we can break through here sustainably, things will get interesting. Then we could definitely head towards $130,000. But I can also easily imagine that we might stagnate here for a bit. I could also imagine that we might drop down again here and then just stay in this range for a few weeks, just like we did back then in this range, moving sideways for a while. That's something I can really see happening right now. But right now, it's still a bit too difficult to make any predictions about Bitcoin because, I mean, you can see for yourselves, it's currently in this price discovery phase. So I'm just waiting a bit to see what happens next. Basically, you have to say that we've already picked up a lot of liquidity here. Especially around $120,000, there was quite a bit of liquidity in this area. We simply had a lot of liquidity there, which we've now absorbed. And that's why we first need to see what happens here. I'm sure that if we break above this level, it will become the next support zone, or it will be the next resistance zone where we'll bounce off again. And then I can imagine that this will be the next sideways phase for Bitcoin, that we might see a bit of sideways movement here through August and September. Personally, I could definitely see that happening. But we'll have to wait and see what happens next here. Ethereum is also looking very good right now. At the moment, I actually think it's looking a bit better than Bitcoin. And the thing is, it's simply because we've broken through a very large support zone here and are currently holding above it quite well and sustainably. From here, the next major overarching target will be $4,800. But we'll have to wait and see when we'll reach that. I mean, of course, things can move quickly with Ethereum, but just take a look for yourselves. Look at this resistance zone that we've tested so many times here. We've finally broken through it now, and it's no longer a resistance zone. Now it's already a support zone, and that's what's important. That's why, as I said, if we break through the $4,800 mark with Ethereum, I think we would attract a lot more retail investors, and then Ethereum would basically have a clear path ahead. At least that's how it feels right now. You already know our long-term targets. We're also extremely bullish on Ethereum in this cycle. But we were already bullish back then, and we showed you these price levels when Ethereum was at $1,500. So that's something you shouldn't forget either. Alright, that's it for now regarding Bitcoin and Ethereum. Today, we're going to talk about whether everything is really as positive as it currently seems, because, I mean, we see Bitcoin hitting new all-time highs. Ethereum. People are talking about us seeing the first interest rate cut soon. And yes, you really have to take a closer look at the economy in the background. There are a few things that some people currently aren't really paying attention to. A very simple example is this. The number of people selling houses is significantly higher than the number of people buying houses. We have significantly more people selling their houses than people buying houses. You can also see it here, especially in 2020 and 2021, when a lot of money was printed and injected into the market, it was the other way around. And right now, it's another phase where you can clearly see that the US economy isn't doing well because some people are being forced to sell their houses due to high interest rates and so on. And something like this is simply a strong sign that the US economy is not doing 100% well. Just as you can see here. The number of insolvent homeowners and apartment owners is higher than it has been since 2011. Take a look at it, please. And that's pretty intense. As I said, this actually indicates that the US economy is still very unstable and that things are far from perfect there as well. And now comes the interesting part. I just mentioned a few negative figures from the US, which are definitely not very pleasant. Yet everything actually seems to be going well. I mean, the crypto market is doing well. The stock market is also doing really well. The S&P 500 is at an all-time high and so on. But please, take a look at this. Look at the kind of bubble we're living in these days. The 10 largest stock companies make up 40% of the S&P 500. There are 500 other companies in the S&P 500. The biggest companies in the world are in there, and the 10 largest stocks make up 40%. You have to realize during the dot-com bubble, when we had a huge crash, the 10 largest companies only made up 27%, and even then, it was such a massive bubble that we had a big burst. And right now, the stock market is so inflated that the 10 largest companies are responsible for everything. That means, without these companies, we would very likely not be doing nearly as well in the stock market. These 10 companies are holding up the stock market, and because of them, it looks like everything is fine. We saw exactly the same thing back in 2000 during the dot-com bubble. And that definitely suggests that in the coming years, or even in the next few months, we could see a much bigger crash in the stock sector, because this is not a healthy development. And what you can also gather from this is that the stock market would not be doing nearly as well if we didn't have these 10 companies performing strongly. And you have to say that's partly because of the whole AI story and so on. A push like Nvidia's drives the entire stock market up while other stocks are suffering badly. And once again, the market cap is completely out of balance with the actual earnings of these companies, just like it was in 2000. And what happened after that? A bigger crash. And that's also a possibility in the coming years. But here you have to say, I no longer expect a recession. We've already had several recessions, and there are also recession indicators and so on. We've seen the worst of it. Even with this recession indicator, we've seen a clear flattening. It's very, very likely that we won't see another recession, which is fundamentally very good. And of course, some people haven't really realized that the US economy is actually not doing nearly as well as people currently think. But I don't want to scare you with that, because what you have to say is the crypto market has changed. We have Bitcoin ETF inflows, and they're enormous. We have more and more institutions investing multiple billions here. Plus, we've just recently seen the law that now even pension funds can invest in crypto. These are simply things that open up completely new doors for us, that can really drive sustainable growth. Just like we can see with the example of Ethereum, where the largest OTC dealer Wintermute simply doesn't have any Ethereum left. You really have to imagine that. Ethereum has already become that scarce because it's being bought up everywhere. These are things that sustainably support us in the crypto market. The best example is simply this Bitcoin correction. What happened there? Big whales, but also retail investors bought in heavily during this major correction. And that's the reason why some are starting to speculate that we might not see a classic bear market anymore, because in the long run, we're simply getting an incredible amount of money flowing into the market. And that's over months, over years. And accordingly, some really tend to believe that we won't see a bear market here anymore, but rather that this will be a kind of super cycle stretching over decades where there will still be corrections from time to time, yes, but not like in the past with 80 or 90% drops. Something like that is very unlikely to happen again. People are smarter now. We have more capital in the market. When all of Wall Street, you can see it yourself, we have a brief correction and then the people, the whales, they start buying in heavily again. We simply have an extremely high demand, and this demand is just lasting longer than expected in this market. Plus, what's coming now with the pension funds and so on, those are additional inflows that will just keep coming in for months. It's not like they're just going to stop paying into the pension funds overnight. No, that's simply additional capital that we receive every month. You just have to say it's becoming increasingly likely that we won't see a classic bear market anymore, and that Bitcoin will simply continue to rise sustainably over the long term. And that's actually the most positive thing you should see here.